since we started our a little AMA with James Pelton the other day, and we asked him what's his favorite cereal. So we're gonna start that tradition. So Josh, what is your favorite cereal and why?
Cereal. Ooh. You know, there's so many good choices out there. But if I had to pick one, I'm a big fan of like the cinnamon style cereals. So I'm gonna go with Cinnamon Life.
Cinnamon Life.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an
Yeah.
interesting one.
Well, it's they're the other ones, out there like Captain Crunch or whatnot, or Cocoa Pebble, well, not Cocoa Pebbles, but like Cocoa Puffs, they're if you eat them, they tend to shred the roof of your mouth, right? And I hate that. So,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
would say Cocoa Pebbles is a close second though.
Gotcha. And Jojo's messaging right now. Jojo is messaging me right now and asking if he wants to be on or if he should be on stage. So Jojo, if you want to hop up here and co-host it with me, you're more than welcome to. But if not, then we can go ahead and continue the cereal talk. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Cinnamon Life is pretty good. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is also pretty good. Um,
Yeah,
let's
I would
see.
say the three that exist in my cabinet, I guess, would be a good way to kind of describe that. I have Cinnamon Life, I have Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and I have Cocoa Pebbles.
Gotcha. Cocoa Pebbles are delicious too.
They are, and then you get that chocolate milk afterwards, so it's like a bonus.
Oh yeah, dude! I saw this video of a guy that like put a bunch of cinnamon toast crunch into a bowl of milk and let it just soak for like a few hours, and then he dumped all or he like strained it into a separate milk thing, so he had cinnamon toast flavored milk, and then apparently they already have cinnamon toast flavored or cinnamon toast crunch flavored milk that you can buy at stores and stuff. It's like
What?
there's like this TikTok commentator that just like roasted the crap out of him, saying like, "Dude, you just wasted a whole box of cinnamon toast crunch to get 1 cup of milk."
No, no, no. So, first off, if you don't know this, you can actually buy bags of just the Lucky Charms marshmallows, and then you can make your favorite cereal taste like shit.
Yeah, pretty much. I have heard of that. I did have a friend that bought like 5 pounds of Lucky Charms marshmallows once.
Yeah, well, it's great, because if you're ever craving, a little bit of disappointment, you can just grab a handful of the marshmallows out of the marshmallow bag and pop them in your mouth and go.
Yeah, yeah. Brent Stratian is saying that golden nuggets are the best cereal ever to be made. I've never heard of them before, though.
That's got to be a British thing.
That is probably true. I've never even seen that packaging.
See, I know what those are, right? And they're called something different over here in America, but for the life of me, I think they're called Golden Puffs over here in America. Yeah, Pops. There you go. They're called Golden Pops or something like that. But yeah, so they are here in America, but nobody buys them because, they're garbage.
Gonna start real trash talk. All right. All right. We can move on to some less serious questions like I guess tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your past career leading up to getting into the crypto space.
Oh, okay. So I would say, a little bit about myself. So October 18th, 1988, I was born, and this has been widely rendered as a mistake. But moving on. Uh, so career-wise, I had some odd jobs here and there growing up, but when I was 18, my friend and I, we actually started a wireless internet company in rural Virginia. Because back then, the only option was dial-up or satellite, which at the time was very spotty. And we weren't I wasn't keen on being inconvenienced with taking forever to do anything on the internet, so we decided to start a company. We purchased a fiber optic backbone from Mid-Atlantic Broadband Cooperative, tossed up a tower. It was microwave point-to-point LOS, similar to like the frequency style of 5G that Verizon's using now. And we had five towers up in total. And to avoid paying like the licensing costs of like communication towers and stuff like that, we found a loophole in the zoning laws, and we used that to our advantage. But the loophole was if it's a ham radio tower, it can be just under 200 feet tall. And it's not technically a communications tower that communications tower that you have to pay like all these fees for, right? So we put a ham radio antenna on top after getting licensed for ham radio operations, and then we would put our equipment underneath it. So it allowed us to, without having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and all these licenses and fees and fines and or et cetera, to actually operate as a small business. So we did that. We wound up having to close that down when the FCC changed the regulations, stating that you had to purchase the right to use the frequency, and Verizon bought our frequency out from underneath us for $1.5 million, and we just weren't in the position at the time to make a counter bid. So we shut down, wound up kind of liquidating our equipment, and then from there moved up to Pennsylvania, and my dad and I basically started up a painting and renovation company, and we've been running that together now for 13 years, I think. I don't know. It's been a while. But yeah, so we've been operating that business. We focus on like the high end custom finishing work. So like we go into those big fancy homes, those McMansions, whatnot, and then we customize them, with the high quality finish and very demanding clientele. But when you're in that circle, you don't have a whole lot of competition. A lot of painting companies or whatnot, they just don't put the attention to detail that we do. So we're actually booked up well past the end of the year already. So stay busy with that. There was a period of time in between there where I was the guy. I was working for another company that had a whole bunch of franchises, and I was the guy that they would send to franchises that were performing poorly to figure out why, and then adjust the staff or retrain the staff to fix the issue, put in standard operating procedures in place for them to just get them back to where they needed to be. But that job, I was gone like 80 hours a week from my home. My daughter was getting ready to be born, and I just wasn't willing to miss that much of her life. Now, how did this all lead to DeFi? So I started investing in the stock market probably about 12 years ago, right? Just taking money that I'd earned and whatnot and putting it into various stocks that I had picked. Performed pretty well, and started getting into like blue chip cryptos. Well, back then there weren't so many alts. So it was about 7, 8-ish years ago where I first started buying up like some BTC. Um, and from there, I just kind of sat on it, right? And then DeFi started becoming a big thing, and I started dabbling into alts. Like I got XRP when it launched, right? I got some XLM when it was dirt cheap, which is stellar. And mainly because I was interested in any crypto alt that had a fast enough network to be able to handle lots of transactions for very cheap. Because for many years now, I've been saying that the world economies are going to be moving more towards central bank digital currencies. You know, our money's all digital mostly anyway, right? Aside from some paper fiat. But uh, with the invention of the blockchain, it just makes sense because governments they want to be able to see, track, and control everything. So for them to come out with a central bank digital currency, it just seems like the logical step. So I started investing into those kind of projects. And Stellar, their network actually got selected by Ukraine to process all the transactions for their upcoming central bank digital currency. So, you know, if you plan ahead, you can kind of see which ones to hop in based off of what they're going to be bringing to the table and where the world is headed. So that got me more into the DeFi space. I started checking out, you know, because I realized that by the time something gets to like Coinbase, you know, or gets to crypto.com, you're not really early at that point, right? So I started branching out more into the DeFi aspect of all cryptocurrencies. Probably about 3 years ago at this point. Um, Time flies. It feels like yesterday, but um, yeah. And so then from there, just start getting more involved into the DeFi space. You know, wound up starting Parrotly Finance with two co-founders because I realized that while the DeFi space is innovative, they're only innovating for current need, um, which everyone's fighting over it, right? You know, you have 1,800 projects, they're all trying to do the same thing, you know, because it's a current need. And so my interest has always been the upcoming need. So when we started Parrotly Finance, I wanted to build something that wasn't a current need, but was going to become a need. Because that's how you capture market share. You know, if you're not first, you're last, and if you're not first to market with a good product, you know, you're just going to be lost in a sea of voices. But yeah,
Yeah, that's quite the backstory leading up to it. That's so many cool things that seem to have happened throughout your entrepreneurial journey, and it's really cool to hear about all the different things that you've been involved in, and I think it's a really impressive backstory leading up to it. So when you started Parrotly Finance, what was kind of like that leap going from, oh, I think DeFi is really cool to, oh, I want to create a DeFi project and be involved for almost, like almost all day, every day at this point. It seems like you're active in Discords and talking it up with people, networking, and just really growing the project.
so well, it was almost born out of frustration and inconvenience. I hate being inconvenienced, right? You know, it started the wireless internet company because downloads took too long. Um, and in DeFi, like you got all these wallets or whatnot, and there's always something about the wallet that inconveniences you. You know, it's annoying. You know, like okay, I want to get something on Binance. Well, now I got to add the Binance chain. You know, now I got to do XYZ. You know, now I have to import all the stable coins. You know, so that my bridge shows up. You know, it's inconvenient. Um, and I was looking at all the DeFi projects, and while they are innovating, again, they're only innovating for current need, and they're kind of ignoring a lot of user comforts, I guess would be a good way to put it. Um, and while sure the current system works, it's hard to adapt to. You know, if you are trying to get into DeFi and you don't know anything, it's a steep learning curve. You know, you're going to spend the first like 2 months just like learning how to do everything. before you feel comfortable enough to actually really start partaking in the DeFi crypto space. And well, that's inconvenient. So, um, looking at these other projects that, aren't planning a couple years ahead, they're just building around what's needed right now. And the inconvenience of however, getting into DeFi, I was like, this has to change. And so we started Parrotly Finance. And it's yeah, you're right. It's been a huge time commitment, but I look at it this way. Um, when everything is said and done, and this is built up to the point where it's essentially autonomous, I'll be able to focus my attentions, towards further development of like Parrotly, or, I don't know, maybe taking a little time off every now and then.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. So, do you have anything else that really motivates you to keep, continue just grinding away at building up these amazing things other than just the sheer inconvenience of other products out there?
Well, let's see. Uh, so I have some personal goals that I'm trying to reach. And they're not monetary based, there's some changes about the world that I want to make. And I thought about going like the political route instead of the business route, but then I realized politicians aren't the ones that have the power, it's the businesses. So I decided to go the business route, because then you can just simply buy the politicians, right? No, I'm just kidding. Strike that from the record. Um, that is just a joke. But long story short, if you want to make a change, um, money is the way to do that. Um, because if there's a problem that you want solved, um, you need money to do it. Lobbying for votes and all this and all that, it's only effective to a certain degree, you know. So yeah, in order to make the changes that I think are necessary in the world, the best way to do that is through creating a corporation that would have the pull necessary to make those changes. Whether it's infrastructure related, like just as an example, America alone actually produces enough food that it would eliminate world hunger across the globe. The reason why the world hunger still exists is because infrastructure is not in place. There's no way to get the food from A to B before it deteriorates and distribute it properly among those who are hungry, right? So, that's why back when there was that whole Twitter thing going on with Elon Musk, where they're like, oh, you have so much money, why don't you spend XYZ and end world hunger, right? And he's like, if you can show me how that much money would actually end world hunger, I'll do it. And the answer is it wouldn't, right? Not unless you're using it to build the infrastructure necessary, but infrastructure has costs. And who's going to pay to maintain those, right? So that's why it's still an issue because honestly, with today's technology, hunger shouldn't be an issue anymore.
Gotcha. Are those kind of like big world changes that you want to see happen? Is that hunger one of those examples of that, or is that just like an example that you brought up to prove a point? Or I guess you could share what you want to, or what you're comfortable with as far as your goals go for that. But be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of what I can and can't share. So I mean, yeah, hunger is a big issue. It's a little bit of background. I'm the second oldest of eight on my mom's side, and growing up, she was a single mom. When you have that many kids, it can be difficult to feed them all, right? Um, and while we did go to bed with our stomachs full, it was a struggle at times. You had to get really creative with taking very, very, very cheap food and making it taste good. And I can just remember thinking that, like we barely have this, and some of us, while we're going to bed with something in our tummy, not necessarily full, and there's a lot who go to bed without anything in their stomach. And I don't think any kid should have to go through that, So that's one of the things. Um, and one of the other ones that has always been a thing for me is homelessness, because not to sound Miss America or anything like that, if I say I want to fix the homeless people, um, a lot of people want, like, I was actually homeless for a period of time. After moving out of my mom's house when the when the wireless internet company got liquidated, most of what was liquidated went to paying back the loans that we had taken out to start the business, right? Um, and so there was a period of time where I was actually homeless, and it wasn't fun, that's for sure. And it was through no fault of my own, and there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with homelessness who it was no fault of their own. And hell, even if it was someone's mistake or someone's fault that they wound up in that situation, once you're there, it is very difficult to ever get back out of that. Um, and it's just so, and while I don't believe in handouts, I believe in hand ups. So like I've always had this little dream of buying like a whole bunch of property and then building essentially a whole bunch of tiny homes on it, right? Nice little neighborhoods that are maintained where, if someone is homeless, they can come there and stay, for like a year, 2 years, whatever, just so that they can have the decency of a shower, a stove to cook their food on, etc. They could get a job right there maintaining, like, because yard work's going to need to be done, more homes are going to need to be built. They can learn a trade, because there's a huge shortage of skilled tradesmen and tradeswomen in today's world. When the millennial generation was being told, oh, if you don't go to college and get a degree, you're going to wind up like that guy. But that guy was there making six figures a year because he's working a blue collar job as a tradesman. Um, and there's a lot of demand and not a lot of people there. So, kind of building this housing, you know, uh, complex where they can get a job, learn a skill, and then go out into the world and, have that opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet. So it's just, yeah. And looking at the chat here, yeah, you guys are right. It's a negative cycle, and it's very difficult to get out of that. So yeah, that's been a little pet project of mine that I want to do when we're at the point, and I would love to. Obviously, a portion of when Parrotly Finance is big, we're going to have a charity division, and I would love to have that the tiny home complex, maybe call it Second Flight or something like that. Give people who are homeless an opportunity to, spread their wings again,
Wow, that's a. I did not know that your story went that deep, but that is awesome. I think building up that community of tiny homes, that sounds like super awesome, and it could really like genuinely help a bunch of people. I think that's super awesome. So how does your perspective on the world change from being homeless to now where you are at right now, being able to have a family and have a flock of parrots in your home too, and have your own home, and there's got to be some sort of perspective change when you get to that point.
There is. And you really learn to not take anything for granted because it can be there one day and gone the next. And you learn that money is just a tool, right? It comes, it goes. Um, what you do with it is important, you know. But one of the things you really learn is that while yes, money has value, time is your biggest asset. And what you do with it is what matters because everything can disappear the next day through no fault of your own. It can just be gone. So, what you choose to do with your time is going to matter a hell of a lot more than how much money you had.
Gotcha. Yeah. Life advice right there. That's deep. But yeah, that's super, a super good perspective to have on things. I think that a lot of people, especially like just starting out, they don't really realize that, you know, what they have could be, taken away, and really appreciating what they have in the moment and being thankful for that rather than just thinking, oh, I need more, more stuff. We live in such a consumer society. Everybody wants the next latest and greatest thing, but they completely reject the stuff that they have and don't appreciate that, even though it's more than what most people in the world have at this current time. And it's definitely a very eye opening to get reminded of that, even just through your story.
Yeah. I mean, look at it this way. If you're someone who has no debt and $1 in your pocket and that's it, you're actually better off than a vast majority of the entire world.
Yeah, yeah, it's a interesting statistic there.
Yeah. There's a percentage, but I don't remember the exact percentage off the top of my head, and I don't want to throw out a random percent and then be wrong. But,
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, what is the day in the life of Joshua Hood look like?
oh geez. Well, usually get up around 6:30 a.m. Then I head to work. Because owner operator of the painting renovation company, I'm out there right next to the employees, doing the work, making sure everything is going smoothly the way it should, because when you have demanding clientele, everything has to have a consistent level of quality. And when you're balancing that out across, employees who have been there for a while and employees who may be newer, you really got to be hands on. So, I'm out there like up on a roof with them installing like fancy dental molding, or I'm inside the house sanding spackle with them to make sure everything is buttery smooth. It's I'm right there with them. Then when the workday is over, anywhere between like 4 or 5 p.m., depending on what we needed to get done that day, head on home, eat dinner, and then turn on the laptop and start working on Parrotly stuff. And networking, building, hiring new developers and everything, and then that goes on until anywhere between 1 and 2 a.m. Uh, then I go to bed, catch about 4 hours of sleep, and do it all over again.
Gotcha. Yeah, I used to do house remodeling actually for a brief period, and it was always it's labor intensive, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, it's like I did something, I built something or installed this, and it's that type of work that's yeah, it can be rewarding, building something.
It
And
is.
I know like developers too, building something with code is really rewarding for them, and it's kind of like that similar feeling for all you developers out there.
It really is. I love working with my hands, right? And that's what most of my hobbies have been. Like I did metalworking for a while because I thought melting metal was cool. So I made myself a forge out of some fire brick and two propane torches, and it would get up to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit in there, melt steel, etc. Just played around with that. But that's working with your hands, right? I build cars as a hobby, working with your hands. It's always good to get in there, sort out whatever situation there may be, like whether it's diagnosing why the car won't start or whatnot, and then that satisfaction of finishing, the product or, finishing the repair and, yeah, you're right. It is very rewarding work. Not necessarily like my passion. My passion is in like the building of DeFi stuff. But in investments and financial workings and, that sort of thing. That's where my passion is. But, as far as hobbies, I enjoy, working with my hands and getting stuff done. So very, very
Gotcha.
rewarding.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that, I mean, I always get the most out of my day when I'm working with my hands and I can actually, you know, have more. It seems like I have more control over what I'm doing when I'm working with my hands, and I don't know, I just like the feeling, but I also don't like working for somebody else. I think being your own boss and having that freedom is something that's just like, to me, one of the best things I could ever ask for, and I appreciate that every day that I can really choose what I want to do, and nobody's like, oh, you have to do this or you get fired. Like, eventually getting to that point, and well, at least for most people, getting to that point is something that's like a huge goal of theirs, and I'll never take that for granted. But yeah, that's why I stopped. But in the future, maybe doing like side projects here and there, or even woodworking as a hobby for me, like that's one thing that I really want to get into. But especially with these lumber prices, that's not necessarily cheap.
Tell me about it. When all the supply chain issues first started, like if we had a quote to go do a remodel on a house or something like that, we had to tell them, look, this quote is good for about a week and a half, and that's about it. After that, the quote price is going to go up because we were watching $7 OBS sheets, go all the way up to, I think they capped out at like almost $70 at one point. So I mean that's oh. Talk about gains right there. The only problem is it was coming out of our pocket. So yeah, it's lumber prices were definitely no joke. Thankfully they're coming back down again. But yeah, no, it's in regards to being your own boss, yeah, there's a different level of stress to it and a different level of risk, but you're also not dealing with the stress of, a boss breathing down your neck, right? You just got to breathe down your own neck. And at that point, your success is entirely determined by how driven you are, right? Not driven by, how much your boss wants to holler at you to get something done by a certain time. So it's more like I definitely think that if someone has a skill that they're currently performing for a company, and getting paid an hourly wage for, I encourage you to seek out a way that you could then start utilizing that skill for a side business of your own. And before you know it, that may wind up being your primary source of income. And, it all comes down to how driven you are and, having that self accountability. But if you can do that, you'll be a heck of a lot better off, than you would be making someone else money.
Yeah, definitely. It is. It's not an easy thing to do though. Self motivation is. It takes so much practice, and I'm still working on that every day. I think we all are, but it's a grind for sure. But the with that, that effort comes the reward of that freedom that provides.
Oh yeah, yeah. I find one of the biggest things I hear when because there's a couple individuals that I mentor, kind of help figure out kind of where they want to go, what they want to do, and ways that they can get there. And um, Sorry, I was looking at that funny meme that got posted in the questions. Uh, yeah, so and one of the biggest things I always hear from them is that they're afraid to take the leap. Going from working for someone else, there's a certain sense of security in that. Okay, I'm making this much. Yes, it could be more if I do my own thing, but what if I fail? And then I'm making nothing. And, there's a reason why the saying is fortune favors the bold, not fortune favors the safe. Um, Obviously, before you take a leap, you want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row or your parrots in a row, if it were. um, have some money set aside because on average, statistically, it takes about 8 to 12 months before a business venture that you're starting becomes profitable. So you need to make sure that you have that money set aside so that when you start your business or, keep working for another company while you're starting your business. It may take you longer to become profitable because you have less time to devote to it, to building it up, but you'll be able to have that security while you're building up your thing. And then once your clientele base or your business that you're doing um, equals what you're currently making, well, then you can stop your current job and then focus all of your energy into continuing growing that so that it surpasses your income very rapidly. So, don't be afraid to take a little risk now and then because what's the worst case scenario, right? You've got this job that you hate. What's the cost? You're worried about the cost to you if you leave and start your own business, but what's the cost to you if you stay? Each year you're there working at that job that you hate, you're losing a little more of yourself in the process. The things that, made you laugh, made you smile, the joy that you had, you lose a little bit of that every time you're in a soul crushing situation, living, working in a job that you hate, you know. So that seems like a pretty high risk to me. And worst case scenario, if your business venture doesn't work, well, you can get another job. So, just don't be afraid to take a little risk now and then. Yeah, you might be risking a little bit of security now, but you're definitely risking your happiness and mental and emotional well-being by staying.
Definitely. Yeah, Jojo's got a couple questions. He says, "What's your best advice to someone wanting to start their own business right now?"
Um, find an area that's not saturated and like just as an example, like drop shipping was all the rage, right? The first couple of people who started drop shipping companies, they made bank, but then the market became saturated. So find something you enjoy doing and find something that other people don't want to do. So like, I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, oh, so glad to have you guys here painting these walls because it would have taken me several weekends to paint this room and, I don't want to lose my time like that. So find something that people don't like doing. Um, because you'll always have people who want to hire you. Um, and then what I would say is do your research. Um, Look into potential competitors, see what they're doing, see what they're charging, see if they're in your area, right? If you're trying to start a business that's locality based, see what kind of competition's in the area, um, and just do your research. I think is going to be the best advice, because if you start building something and then realize, oh, I should have registered this as, with an LLC here, as the LLC, and then like have it as a subsidiary LLC. It's going to be harder for you to set that up again the correct way instead of just doing it right the first time. So do your research, know your stuff, um, and then take a little risk.
Gotcha. Just simple ABC 1, 2, 3 steps right there.
Essentially, it doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of people think that it's going to be real complicated. It doesn't have to be, you know. And I personally, there's areas of business that are not my strong suit, and so I surround myself with people who that is their strong suit. like coding, development, stuff like that. Um, I am not a coder by any stretch of the imagination. And so I surrounded myself with people who are. That's why we have our CTO for Parrotly. He runs that department. He interviews the developers, and if he says, that this is a good hire, then I put through the paperwork and get him hired. So find yourself a little circle of people who have skills that you don't, and then learn to trust them. One of the biggest problems I see a lot of new business owners do is that they feel they have to do everything to make sure everything is done correctly. And you're going to burn yourself out doing that because one person cannot do everything, right? So you got to trust them to do their job.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, I think all that super great information, and I know a lot of it. I haven't had a super long entrepreneurial career, not nearly as long as yours, but what you're saying definitely resonates with me and from my experiences so far. And I cannot stress it enough. Like business, people like complicate it. Like there's a lot of unknowns when you're just getting into something that, it might seem like super complicated and oh, I'm not fit for this. But if you really do the research and understand what you're getting yourself into, then suddenly it just starts making way more sense. And it's like, oh, this is actually, not super difficult to do. And I think, like Josh said, doing the research is really the first step that can enable you to making that step, the big leap of faith of taking that extra risk and really doing something above and beyond your regular day job. And I think that's some super awesome advice. But
Yeah.
Brent asks a question. He says, "Do you believe in business that it is essential to sacrifice the short term in favor of the long term gain?"
Oh, that's a good question. So fun little fact before I answer that question. Did you know that the human brain um, does not actually develop to the point where it can fully appreciate the difference between long-term reward versus short-term gain until its late 20s? Um,
I did not.
so just a little fun fact there for you. Um, and I see Brent's like, I did know that. I'm a genius. Uh, but just for those who might not know that, so while it is difficult to put aside short-term gain for long-term reward, I don't believe in business that it's necessary to sacrifice short-term in favor of the long term. You can have your cake and eat it too, right? So yeah, um, it is going to be more work. You're going to have less free time. You're going to really have to be involved in the short term when you're getting started. And in a sense, I guess you could say that yes, that is a sacrifice of the short term. Um, but if you are building towards something that you really, really want, um, it's not going to feel like a sacrifice. Like I love gaming, right? I have not touched a game in oh geez, about 2.5 years at this point. And I miss it, yes, but it doesn't feel like a sacrifice for me to not be able to enjoy some of my time killer hobbies while I'm building everything because I get satisfaction in knowing that I'm building towards a future that's going to be amazing. Um, so from the outside, before you started doing it yourself, it looks like a sacrifice in the short term. But I can tell you that once you're in it and once you're doing it, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be my answer to that. You know, because I guarantee that Zach, you've had your hands absolutely full since starting Cardinal House. But it
Oh
hasn't
yeah.
felt like work, has it?
No, it's been a blast. I ever since about December or January, it's been a nonstop 60 to 80 hours a week, but at the same time, or all while not getting paid, but at the same time, it's like I enjoy what I do, and I've learned so much along the way that it's going to help me out so much later on in my life when I could reapply those skills to a future adventure or even just continuing to grow a Cardinal House. I think that regardless, I've enjoyed the process of it, and I've learned so much that I'm gonna have this permanent benefit throughout the rest of my life. You know, not necessarily just from business standpoint, but even just like getting to connect with a bunch of different people, learning how to effectively communicate with people and just present myself in a better manner. There's all those soft skills that go into business, but also go into other aspects of your life that will help you just achieve your goals essentially. And going back to Brent's question, do I think it is essential to sacrifice short-term gain or short-term gains in favor of the long-term gain? Um, I think that there's some outlier cases where that's not necessarily the case, but a general rule of thumb is that yes, you're sacrificing the short-term um, monetary gain, maybe if you're just working a regular job compared to a long-term potential of a business. So it's not necessarily a sacrifice in the short term in every single scenario, but yes, I think a general rule of thumb for going out of your way and starting something yourself is that you're gonna have a lot of hardships in the beginning, and you're probably not going to be able to do it full time if you're supporting a family or other loved ones. But yeah, I mean, long term gain is definitely it takes a lot of work to build up to at that point.
It does. It does. You know, one of the big reasons why, you know, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice though is because you are growing, you are building, you're learning, you're experiencing new things, and you know, humans as a whole, you know, and as an individual, like our purpose in a sense is to grow, is to learn, is to experience, is to build, you know, is to improve. um, and when you're doing that, it feels satisfactory, right? You know, you have that I can hang my hat on this sense of pride. When you're just going to work at 9, punching out at 5, you know, it's soul sucking in a sense because it's not you're not doing what you're meant to do, you know, and you're meant to grow, learn, you know, develop, explore, you know, become better than the person you were yesterday, you know, and when you fall into a rut, you know, it can be very draining. So you almost get an exhilaration when you're building something, when you're growing, when you're learning, when you are becoming a better person than you were yesterday.
Gotcha. Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, Brent's got one more question, and he asks, out of all the business ventures, could you tell us one moment that stands out to you in regards to success and the pride that it gave you?
Oh, that's a good question. So the first thing that comes to mind um, is back when we started the wireless internet company, there was a lady who worked, and she used to have to commute an hour and a half every day to get to her workplace because the dial-up internet that was available in her area wasn't fast enough to allow her to work remotely. And the satellite, it kept going out, you know, anytime there was too much cloud coverage in the area. So, you know, she would have to commute. And I just remember her being so happy and excited that now she was able to get 3 hours of her life back every single day, 3 full hours that she wasn't wasting commuting. That's 3 extra hours a day that she could spend with her family, um, all because we supplied high speed internet to her home. And that was because of our company. No one else was coming in to do it. Verizon wouldn't touch it. The population density was too low, and we came in, provided that service, and she got an extra 3 hours of her life back every day. And that's the first example that comes to mind. There's been other instances, but I always say, if it's the first thing that comes to mind, that's got to be the best one, right? So,
Actually, that's awesome. I think that's a definitely a benefit. If you're providing a service that's solving a real problem that people have, and people will be very appreciative of that. And I think there's going to be cool moments along the way like that that you get to learn like, wow, I really do actually make an effect on people's day-to-day lives and do make a change for the better. I think that's very humbling at times.
it is. But I will say that I think that while that is the current first example that comes to mind, I foresee quite a few moments like that coming with Parrotly Finance, like certain events that could take place that when it happens, or if I see it like on the news or like in a paper or something like that, I think it'll all hit me finally, that this is real. We are here and we're making a difference, and I think once that happens, that'll be my new favorite moment. But
Gotcha. Always something to look forward to too. It's always good to have.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, do you do anything to practice like personal development, trying to better yourself every day? Do you do anything along those lines?
Um, I always try to learn one new thing a day. Um, whether it is how something works, whether it is an aspect of like global economy, or whether it is, whatever it is. I always try to learn one new thing a day, um, as a minimum. And I think if everyone just tries to learn one new thing a day, they'll find that that's 365 new things they could learn every year, and learning something is pivotal to growth. If you're just doing the same thing all the time, you're not going to grow, right? Because you're not learning anything new. You have no new resources to pull from. And knowledge is the most powerful resource there is, in my humble opinion. So, yeah, to make sure that I am always a slightly better person than I was yesterday, I try to learn one new thing a day.
Gotcha. I like it. I think that is a very valuable skill to have. Even though it might not seem like a skill, I think it's a skill to recognize that as long as you continue to develop yourself and grow your knowledge base, that you're going to continue to be able to help more people along the way that maybe might not be at that same level as you, and really just spreading your knowledge and just helping others, I think is as a byproduct of continuing to improve yourself.
Yeah, it definitely can be, because if the more you know, the more answers you'll have, and everybody's got a question, right? And these questions can be very important to them, So if you can help them answer that question, it could really benefit them too. So yeah, no, I fully agree.
Definitely, yeah. And then let's see. Neil Mack asks, last week, while conjuring up the best DeFi project of all time, I think he's referring to UFDP, given the profile picture.
Probably.
um, you told me Parrotly started as a joke. How did Parrotly come about?
Oh, okay. I'll try to bullet point that, because it is a very long story. But so bullet point. Um, essentially it started off a joke someone made asking if they could pay me in seed token. Um, and while we already had the idea for a business style DeFi wallet, there was no naming for it, no branding for it, nothing like that. We had the idea for the DeFi wallet, which is going to be the corporate side of the Flock wallet, right? Um, but that's what triggered, you know, going with the theme that we have, building the company that we have, was, being able to pay for something in like seed coin, right? Was that joke. Um, and it started off this little frenzy of, everything's parrot themed, because I have five parrots actually. Um, African gray, lilac crown, Amazon, green cheek conure, and two parakeets. And so the parrot theme just makes sense. And I was rolling with a parrot profile picture of my African gray, and so everyone just kind of called me Mr. Parrot. Um, and so then Parrotly Finance, and it all just kind of stemmed from that. And my African Gray was a huge inspiration. I mean, he was the base of all of the NFT images, right? Um, and yeah, it's been a fun wild ride, but yeah, it all essentially coalesced from that joke that was made by Zeke, our co-CEO.
Gotcha. Interesting upbringing of the Parrotly Finance. So what kind of started your interest into parrots? Because I know you've got five of them, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of started the parrot interest?
So when I was younger, my family took in a cockatoo, which is a really big one, by the way. If you're not familiar with cockatoos, they are very big birds. They're on in the large territory. All the birds that we have range from either the small to the medium territory as far as size goes. But we were fostering this cockatoo for a while, and I really got to experience how birds are entirely trust based. It's not like a dog where you can win it over with food. It's not like a cat that's, will tolerate your presence. Birds, they either love you or they don't. And it's entirely based off of earning their trust. Um, so I thought that was really cool. And that cockatoo actually chose me out of the nine other people in the house, as the one that it trusted. Uh, it was a little possessive though. Like if anyone got near me, it would try to attack them. Uh, but yeah, so I just like how birds are very intelligent. Like as an example, my African gray, he has the intelligence of a five-year-old kid, human child, can problem solve, learn the same things, learn conversation. He talks a lot. Um, they're just very intelligent creatures, and so I felt that draw to them because of that. Like I love that interaction that you can have with them. And then the whole earning their trust and being a trusted member of their flock, that's another big thing too. So yeah, just the trust and intelligence aspect of parrots just always kind of called to me.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. Parrots are interesting creatures to me too. Like they definitely have that look about them and they act in a certain way that you can kind of tell like they know what's going around them more so than like a dog or another, household pet. Like all
Yep.
the parrots I've been across have definitely they just there's like an interesting aspect to them. I don't really know how to describe it, but definitely interesting.
Yeah, there's that curiosity. You can see like the intelligence like burning behind the eyes, so to speak, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, you can tell they're soaking it all up. They're, figuring everything out and they're forming opinions on it, you know? Like, ooh, I don't like that thing because it's a color I don't like. Like, legitimately, um, one of our little parrots, the green cheek conure, if you walk by with something that's a bright purple, he will freak out and start doing danger squawks, um, and like flying around the room. He does not like purple and he does not like orange. Why? We have no idea. But something in his past made him afraid of those colors, and so he will freak out whenever he sees them. So like they form their opinions. They remember things. If you were mean to them once, like a year ago, they'll hold that against you. It's a grudge. It'll stick.
Yeah, Chris, you got that purple profile picture background behind your Cardinal there. You might want to change that so you don't make him upset.
Uh,
But yeah, we want to keep these podcasts to around an hour. So we got one more question in chat, and then I think that'll be a good ending point. So
okay.
Endgamer asks, "What's the hardest thing you've come across on your journey in DeFi?"
Remembering that DeFi crypto cannot be treated the same way as your stock portfolio. um, because, I come from a stock investment background, right? And, blue chips, it was one thing, right? It was a certain level of additional risk, but you could still just kind of hold it and eventually you'd get a return on your investment. In DeFi, this is not the case. You need to actively stay on top of everything that you're invested in and understand that at any point in time, it could all go poof, right? We all have our horror stories in DeFi, where we invested into something that we thought was a really promising project, and then we wake up one day and it's gone to zero, right? Um, so it's just the speed, I would say, um, is hard to remember, to pay attention to, right? Um, there's that running joke where a week in DeFi is a year in real life, right? Because the speed at which it moves, the sentiment at which it shifts, it's all much faster. And as a result, you cannot treat it the way you treat other investments. In and out, DCA in, DCA your way out, just be aggressive, constantly moving. Now and then you get lucky and you come across, one or two projects that are really solid long term, and I'm glad that I have a couple of those that I have money parked in. But in regards to most of DeFi, I've always got my finger hovering over the sell button, right? Metaphorically speaking, just because you got to be prepared to just boop, hop out, right? So
Yeah,
and it's hard because one of the hardest things, um, that anybody will deal with in DeFi is selling. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, right? Because everyone's like, oh, it's easy to sell, blah 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 blah. But if it was easy to sell, why do you have so many people who are holding bags that they're way down on? It's easy to hold. It's hard to take profit because we wind up talking ourselves into a state where, oh, this is going to keep going up. This is going to keep going up. I'm going to make so much off of this. If I sell now, I'm going to miss out, right? That fear of missing out, while it causes people to buy, it also keeps them from selling. Um, and that's one of the reasons why I have always encouraged, and people have seen me actively encourage it before, like in the Parrotly Discord, my own project. Um, when you're up a lot, take out your initials. Don't forget to take out your initials. Because that de-risks yourself. So. Yeah, I would say that's the hardest thing is just remembering to at the pace at which things moves, make sure you pay yourself, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I got one last hypothetical and fun question. So
Uh,
if human emotion were the other way around, where people were more afraid of losing what they have rather than the fear of missing out and gaining more, do you think the stock market and crypto would even be here?
um, yeah, I think they would still be here. Reason being, you would just see a lot less retail investors. It'd be mostly like um, corporate money, hedge funds, etc. There'd be less retail investors involved in it. DeFi would be a much smaller space. Um, the reason why DeFi has become such a big space is because everyone's trying to recreate Bitcoin, right? They're trying to go from, 3/10 of a cent all the way up to 60,000, right? Uh, and so that's why DeFi is so prevalent, um, even though adoption of it is relatively small worldwide currently. But yeah, so I think it would still exist, but DeFi in and of itself would be much smaller. Stock market would definitely still be there because stock market's not really run by retail investors anyway. It's mostly run by big money.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I can get behind that thought process. Definitely makes sense. But yeah, I think it's been a little over an hour. I think it's a good stopping point. So thank you everybody for listening in. It's been a phenomenal first episode, and Josh, thank you so much for taking the time for coming on.
Absolutely. And one final thing before we wrap this up. So I know that with James Pelton, you asked him what his favorite cereal is, and then you asked me what my favorite cereal is. I think instead of Cardinal Cast, you should call it Cardinal Crunch.
Ooh, okay. I can get behind Cardinal Crunch. Maybe give us some thumbs up in the chat if we should change the podcast name to the Cardinal Crunch. Cardinal Crunch it is. All right. I like it. I like it. That's a fun little name.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for having us. It was a pleasure being here. I look forward to, you know, if we have a chat again in the future.
Of course, of course. Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. This is amazing. So yeah, have a great rest of your day.
You as well.
Bye.